It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented this week by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association's 9th Annual Stallion Auction. We'll tell you about that coming up. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're glad you could join us. First, Ray, though, it is already time to start thinking about this year's Kentucky Derby. Had a couple of preps last weekend, and this week we got the odds, the annual odds that come out from Johnny Avello, the Vegas expert who has 285 horses listed. You know, this year it came out later than normal because now he works for DraftKings, the casino they have, the sports book they have down in Mississippi. Have you made your future bet so far?
I haven't had a chance to drive to Mississippi yet to take advantage of that. I've bet the future before. They used to call it the winter book. I'm just not very smart at it. I think you need good inside information, be a clocker or know a clocker. It's hard to get really good odds. I knew some guy that had a future book bet on a Derby winner one year, and actually if he'd waited and bet the horse the day that he won, he would have gotten better odds than he got in the future book. So I saw that happen, and I thought, I think I'll just wait for Derby day to make my bets.
Well, it is a risky business, but there are opportunities out there. I get excited when I see the list of horses and their odds. I mean, you look at what Avello has out there right now. I'm looking at Instagram is 75 to 1 on his list. Code of Honor is 150 to 1. I mean, those are pretty tasty odds when you look at the Kentucky Derby official future wager, which Instagram is only about 10 to 1 and Code of Honor is only 18 to 1. So to me, this looks into the future of what is possible with sports betting hooking up with horse racing, and that is options. The ability to look at various platforms where fixed odds are available, and there's a pari-mutuel offering as well. I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you cited the official odds. That's from the first Kentucky Future Wager pool last year, and what always happens in that pool is you've got, I forgot how many horses are actually listed, then you've got all others, which I don't know if it was a six to 5. So the mutual field was a 6 to 5 favorite. And while that may be a good bet, I'm just not that interested in 6 to 5. So I kind of I get excited looking at these odds because I know some people have cashed some pretty big tickets, and I know how much one race can affect the odds in Vegas. A horse can break its maiden and go from 300 to 1 to 30 or 50 to 1 just off a maiden win.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I have a great story from last year. On February 17th of 2018, a guy in Vegas made a bet on Justify through Johnny Avello. And Avello knew this guy, and he called him a very respected horseman, and that's all he would say. But he made a bet. This was the day before Justify even raced. His first race was February 18th. He got 300 to 1 on Justify on February 17th. I can show you the ticket. Here it is right here. You can see he bet $500, and when Justify won the Kentucky Derby a few weeks later, he collected 150 grand. So there are stories out there. There are opportunities out there through these futures wagers.
I heard a very similar story. I happened to go to Uruguay last weekend for a big race, and I ran into a guy who owns horses, who lives in Vegas, who also races horses down in South America, and he basically told me the same thing. He said he talked to a Southern California trainer who told him that Justify, who had not raced at that point, would win the Triple Crown. Now, this guy didn't say that he was the one that made the bet, but maybe he passed word along to somebody who had the nerve to make that bet. So good for that guy for taking the book for some money.
Well, one of the problems right now trying to take advantage of these odds is, like you said, you got to drive down to Biloxi, Mississippi to go to the DraftKings sports book there, or you got to be in New Jersey, the William Hill book at Monmouth Park or you got to be in Vegas to take advantage of this. But I think in a couple of years, we're probably going to see where you will be able to do this online once the states get the legislation through. Because that would be, right now online the official wager is available, but again that's pari-mutuel. And Justify last year, by the time the third pool came out, so he wasn't in the second pool that week. The guy made the 300 to 1 odds on Justify. That week, Justify wasn't even listed in the official wager as an individual betting interest. You would have gotten 2.5 to 1 on him that week. By the time he raced a second time, Justify was listed as an individual interest a month later, and it was 6 to 1. So you can see within a span of 3 weeks, somebody got 300 to 1, and then you end up getting 6 to 1 in mid-March.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that we're going to see more of this. More and more states in 2019 are going to be adding sports betting and online betting and e-gaming. I heard an interview with the newly elected governor of Illinois recently, and they've got a real budget crisis in Illinois. Two of the things he said he's doing is going to push for is sports betting and online gaming. So that's a perfect marriage. But one of the things that horse owners probably care about, and I think Churchill Downs probably does too, is these future bets that are fixed odds or bookmaker bets. None of the money from those pools goes back to the horsemen, or to my knowledge, none of it goes back to Churchill Downs. That's why I think Churchill Downs invented or created the Kentucky Derby future wagers, which is pari-mutuel, so they can get the takeout and get their revenue. So this is one of those questions that is going to come up with sports betting. Do the leagues get a cut of sports betting? Should Churchill Downs or the Horsemen in Kentucky get a cut of Kentucky Derby future wagers? These are things that may or may not end up, in dispute.
Well, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie just said this week, he doesn't believe the league should be getting a cut, and I know the leagues have a different opinion about that. I can't even remember what the term is, but some sort of fee to protect the integrity fee. It's protecting the integrity of the game, which I kind of think is nonsense, because this stuff has been going on for years offshore and other places, and we haven't heard of any complaints about the integrity of the sporting events based on wagering, and I don't think it's going to change when you legalize it. So I think that's kind of... But the point is, the states are going to have a battle on their hands with the leagues over this, and all this legislation. I mean, we have to stay in front of it from the horse racing perspective to be a part of the conversation, so that we kind of get something we want out of it as an industry and aren't just a victim of the legislation that comes out, which has happened in the past with casino gaming and slots and things, where the decision making is the decisions are made and horse racing is left out in the cold.
Well, one thing I'll say that is good about future bets, bookmaker bets, is it is going to increase interest in the Derby. If you give people a chance to bet futures in the Kentucky Derby, it's the one race that the general public can relate to. So there's going to be more interest in it. And I think that's good news for Churchill Downs, good news for the NBC telecast, because more people will watch. And ultimately, I would hope it's good news for racing if those people do more than just bet one bet a year on the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, and I think with the platforms that are possible, you have TVG and FanDuel with a partnership, and there's DraftKings with their platform online that I could see even like during the end of the football season, during the playoffs or the Super Bowl, people are going online to bet, and then the availability of futures odds on the Kentucky Derby is sitting right there, and you're looking at 150 to 1 on a horse that looks pretty good. So, yeah, I think sports bettors would love to have that opportunity, and that's another thing down the road that could be very appealing.
Yeah, the landscape is definitely changing, and it's going to be changing over the next several years as more and more states change their laws as a result of the Supreme Court decision last year.
All right, well, I got to get my homework started here on this list of horses. I do actually enjoy trying to capitalize early on this stuff. What do you like to do when it comes to this type of wager? Do you prefer to go through the pari-mutuel system, the Kentucky Derby future wager, or would you like better to have fixed odds, bookmaking? Let us know. We have a poll on our website, PaulickReport.com. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association is having its 9th Stallion auction. It's next Thursday, January 17th. You can find all the links and information at pabred.com. You need to do a free registration quickly before you jump into the auction. But it looks pretty interesting. There's quite a few stallions available.
Yeah, and these are not just Pennsylvania stallions, not just Northeast regional stallions. They have put together a really terrific lineup of seasons available for Kentucky Farms stallions and throughout the Northeast. So check it out at pabred.com, register, and get started for the breeding season by getting your season at this auction.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.